Good evening, members of the gallery, councillors and staff to the ordinary meeting of Council 11th of June 2025, and I declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. Just like to start with our warm welcome, which is Kaya Kardich Wajak Noongar. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and their descendants. The terms and conditions of entry into this meeting are posted on the door as you enter, and we ask if you could please abide by them and ensure that you have read them prior to attending this meeting. Tonight, attendance and apologies. We have all council members in attendance except for Councillor Miles, who is on leave, and we have Councillor Podolfnik just come in, and we have everyone here. That's it, everyone's here. I have nil apologies. Part 4, declarations of financial proximity, interests and interests affecting impartiality. We have the following declarations. Councillor Henderson declared a proximity interest in item 15.2. Councillor Catalano, Henley Brook Avenue, environmental assessment as part of the Henley Brook Avenue, which abuts his property. And Councillor Henderson declared a proximity interest in item 15.3, Henley Brook Avenue, Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water as parts of Henley Brook Avenue abut his property also. Are there any other councillors that need to submit a declaration of interest? No? If there is, just hand that up to the CEO. Thank you. Move to part 5, public question time. Questions and answers recorded in the minutes of meeting may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996. All questions received for this meeting have been answered and responded to and have been included in this schedule. And all questions will be published in the minutes of the meeting. 5.1, answers to questions which were taken on notice. We had 5 questions from Mr Harry Grad, and these have been answered and sent to Mr Grad, and they will form part of the minutes of this meeting. For 5.2, this is questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. So 5.2.1, questions of which due notice have been given. We had 5 questions from Ms Michelle Davies and Ms Jan Zek on item 14.2.2, which is the MRS Amendment 1411, North Ellenbrook East. And these have been answered and sent to Ms Davies and to Ms Zek, and they will also form part of the minutes of this meeting. We also had 4 questions from Mr Robert Bradbury, and they were on item 14.2.3, and the response to Council's motions, Black Cockatoo support activities, and these have been answered and sent to Mr Bradbury. They too also form part of the minutes of this meeting. That brings us to 5.2.2, and this is questions without due notice for items. So members in the gallery have 5 questions, and we had no questions received, and we have Ms Janzek registered though to ask questions on item 14.2.2, which is the MRS Amendment 1411 North Ellenbrook East. Ms Zek.
Thank you. I'm sorry, this is going to be a bit of a prelude to this one, but the rest of them are short. The recent sewage spill in Spearwood is a problem because of the risks it raises for newly developed areas in the City of Swan. In new urban development areas, Water Corporation is usually well behind the development in providing urban structure. For the last 20 years, raw sewage is still being transferred to trucks and transported to a treatment plant for Averley. Sewage is being pumped out of sewage pipes for a manhole in the middle of Brooklyn's Henley Brook because no connection has yet been made to the main sewer. My concern is the majority of the parks or public open space in new areas are used for storm and groundwater drainage. Many of them drain into wetlands and creek lines. Drainage infrastructure is actually located in the creek lines in some of the situations. If a situation like Spearwood eventuates here, particularly in North Ellenbrook East, raw sewage would go straight into the Western Swamp Tortoise Reserves. So what provisions are there to prevent this from happening?
So was that the first question?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to take each one?
Yeah, we'll do one at a time if you're happy with that. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Mr van der Linde?
Madam Mayor, thank you. In relation to North Ellenbrook East specifically, the detail of the drainage and the design will still have to be done through local structure planning and subdivision stages. But if a disaster like that happens, it will be catastrophic. That is absolutely true, and you've seen it in Spearwood where it has happened now. So you would want to make sure that Watercorp has a proper design and that scenario does not occur.
Thank you. As most of the responses to my recent questions on notice generically say the EPA or DWER are responsible for making all the decisions about drainage management strategies and environmental protection, what is the role of local government and what responsibility does it carry? Put simply, why is the city required to sign off on these strategies?
Mr. van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, thank you. If we look at the basic guidelines in regards to drainage management in Western Australia, it's guided by the guidelines. It's called Better Urban Water Management, which is an agreement between the various state government departments. Now, in terms of those guidelines, DWAR has got the responsibility to endorse water management plans, and the approval of those plans happens through the approval of the structure plans by the WAPC. Now, in the guidelines, it specifically says the role of local government is basically to assess for the assessment and clearance of urban water management plans where they are the designated clearing authority. Now, if you look at the process of approvals, both the MRS scheme amendments, local planning scheme amendments, local structure plans, district structure plans, subdivisions are all approved by the WAPC, and the clearance for subdivisions for the overarching clearance is provided by WAPC. It is only the construction part of the infrastructure that is designed in accordance with those approved plans that the city has responsibility to sign off on. So the city is at the end of the chain in a very vulnerable position in that regard. So therefore, if you follow the principles of whereby all these plans are prepared, and there's a problem at the end of the day, the local government becomes responsible for the on-the-ground impacts. So in the context of the urban growth corridor currently in the city of Swan, the fact that the urban growth corridor is now developed up to around about 80%, it's probably the right time now for us to be able to assess the cumulative impact of that development and to assess the performance of those drainage systems. And that is the process that have recently been commenced through the process that we've mentioned in the answers to Mr. Gratz's questions.
Thank you. I think I'll have to read the agenda to see exactly what you said and what it means. But thank you for the explanation. And I suppose that some of my next questions may cover the same ground. So if they do...
Madam Chair, and I'm very happy to have a discussion afterwards with Ms. Zek about this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Just tell me if you've already answered these ones, because we don't want to go over the same ground. Many staff reports and correspondence, particularly from strategic planning, references interrogation of documents and development proposals. Why is ratepayer money being paid if city staff are just regurgitating what is being presented by developers and other agencies? Surely they should be interrogating these documents with the benefit of local knowledge, collected data and mapped outcomes so that local and regional environmental assets along with cities, ratepayers and residents are protected from inappropriate and or detrimental development.
Mr. van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, partly part of the answer was, or part of the question was answered in my previous response, but I would like to highlight that the work that staff's doing at the moment, there's a lot of time being spent to work with the various agencies, the Department of Planning and the various developers to try and get better coordination in the whole system, because there is a lack of coordination in that regard. So city staff time is really, there's a huge effort being put in that regard, and going back to the department with ideas of how it can be done better, and making sure that the developers at least talk to each other, that the agencies are better coordinated. So on the basis that we cannot make decisions, we can only influence what they do, and that is what all our efforts are about at the moment.
Thank you. I'm going to ask these questions, although you have already answered some of it. If the City of Swan is beholden to these higher bodies for assessing development proposals and doesn't have a say in what and how development occurs, why is the City ultimately responsible for the outcomes, and where is the protection for our environment and residents and ratepayers? So I think basically you've answered that one. And the last one is groundwater levels and some associated water quality testing are being undertaken and collected in and around new urban areas. Data collected over the last decade shows a marked increase in groundwater levels, with a rise of around 1 metre in the driest part of the year, despite decreases in average rainfall and even drier conditions for this period of the year in recent times. This change to local hydrology is having and will have significant adverse impacts on the amenity and economic viability of surrounding areas, as well as within the newly developed urban areas. Why is the City refusing to acknowledge that we have a developing problem of significant size and impact on our hands? And before you answer that, I think you already have acknowledged that we do have a massive problem.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think what I've identified is we've got a massive problem if it's not designed properly and if something goes wrong. In terms of there being rising water tables, that is what's being currently investigated, which we're trying to verify through the work that we're doing. And once we've got those answers, one will be able to do something about it. But that's what we're trying to verify at the moment, what the situation is.
Thank you. And yes, I'd appreciate being able to speak to you later. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you much, very much, Ms Zek. I'll ask, is there anyone in the gallery that is not registered wishing to ask a question relating to items in the agenda tonight? No? Okay. We move to 5.3, other questions to items not contained in the agenda. So 5.3.1, questions of which due notice has been given. We had 5 questions from Ms Tasma Rush Harvey and 1 question from Ms Smarter Turner, and these have been answered and sent to Ms Rush Harvey and Ms Turner, and they'll form part of the minutes of this meeting. 5.3.2, questions without due notice. We have Ms Viola Maripodi and Mr Humphrey Bogart have registered to ask questions. Ms Maripodi, if you'd like to come to the podium and you can ask 5 questions.
Thank you. Good evening. My questions tonight relate to the sale of Lot 501, proposed lots 503 and 504, Paradise Keys, Balladura, which is scheduled for 20th of June 2025. 1A. Will the limestone entry statements with the name The Lakes Estate from Alexandra Drive into Paradise Keys remain on the public road reserve land and under the control of the City of Swan?
Mr Vanderlyn.
Madam Mayor, as a result of previous submissions by the community in regard to the sale of this land, some years ago, the city rezoned the land, and Lot 501 was subdivided to create Lot 504 and 505, and that included the widening of Paradise Keys Road Reserve and that intersection to specifically retain that entrance statement within the public area, so within the road reserve. So that subdivision was approved, it was done, and that is considered in the sale. So the land that is sold is not the public area, and therefore the statement will stay within the road reserve.
The reason I'm asking that is the latest map that the developer put out is actually for lot 501. It has no mention of proposed lots 503, 504. So I want it very clear what lots are for sold or for sale. And my B, can I ask the B part to that one? Or will the limestone entry statements be part of lot 501 Paradise Keys and sold as part of the land to be developed? This is what I want very, very clear, because we're getting different maps, different, we're getting 501, 503 for north and south, 503 for north, 504 for south. We're getting all these different lot numbers.
Madam Mayor, the entry statement initially formed part of lot 501. Lot 501 was then subdivided so that the entry statement is removed from the lot that it was to be sold. And the land that is now in process of being sold exclude that part, so it's not the whole of lot 501 that is sold. It is the new lot 504 and 505. So those parts that exclude the road widening and this entry statement that is being sold to the developer.
Thank you for that.
Do you have a third question?
My second question, will the developer be able to knock down and rebuild the existing limestone entry? And B, will the developer be able to use the entry statements as signage for the new development and thereby drop the signage that lacks the estate? I'm asking these questions because the developer has made a few comments that he will be knocking down the limestone walls and rebuilding. And I just want it very, very clear that he is not able to do that. And where he's getting his information from, I do not know.
Madam Mayor, I'm not directly involved in the discussions with the developer itself, but the developer will have no right to demolish anything in private land unless he's got the consent of the council.
Thank you. That's what I want made very, very clear. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Mr. Bogart if he has some questions.
At the May 14 council meeting, I asked the question, can we draw the conclusion that the local biodiversity plan is an astroturfing, greenwashing exercise to facilitate the continuation of business as usual? Then the minuted answer by the City of Swan was, this question is taken on notice. My question is, where's the answer?
Would you like an answer?
Well, if
I'll
it comes
ask
in, no, not necessarily now, but I mean, there could
It's
be
a question, so if you are posing a question in question time, then you have to give the respect to the staff members to be able to respond to that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that can
Thank you, Mr. Vanderlyn.
Madam Mayor, the answer to that is no, and that item was on the night there was a decision to not deal with that item and for the city to provide further information. That further information is being prepared at the moment. Council will be briefed on that further information. I think it's scheduled for the 23rd of July, after which it will come back to Council. And at that stage, Council will resolve on the matter, and that will determine the status of that plan.
Thank you. Did you have a second question?
Yes. The City of Stirling has a street tree register for at least 10 years. It's not complicated. It's regularly updated. I know this because I'm a co-author of two academic papers on street trees, and we use their data. Consultants are doing the same thing, for example, at Brabham State 3 for the LPS. Why does the City of Swan need to further investigation as the answer on my question about the tree register at the last council meeting?
If you're able to, or Mr. Vanderlyn? No.
Okay. In terms of a street tree register, I don't know exactly to which answer of what question you refer to. But our investigations into tree registers have indicated that it relies on the input by somebody else on listing trees onto that register. Some councils rely on the community listing trees on that register, and it's not successful. The approach we have taken in terms of tree registers is essentially that because we're such a vast area with so many trees, we rely on mapping, which now becomes available through LiDAR data. So in terms of the tree retention policy that we will start a consultation on in a few weeks' time now, that mapping and that technology is now available. So in terms of that mapping, it will identify trees that have a certain size canopy and a certain height, and that map will essentially be a register for everyone to refer to. So if we receive an application, a statutory planner will be able to look on our Intramap system and will identify if there's a significant tree, which per definition may be 4 meters high and a canopy of 3 meters. So that's the approach that we prefer taking because of the fact that we've seen that street tree registers that relies on inputs by others is not as effective.
Did you have, Mr. Coaten, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, and perhaps just to add to what Mr. van der Linde has said, the city's got tens of thousands of street trees, and it is quite resource intensive to go and collect data and the attributes of each of those trees, and that's got to be balanced against the benefit of having that information. So it really is just a case that it's a very large job, and the benefit of having every tree on a register and its attributes, the benefit of that probably wouldn't outweigh the cost of collecting that information.
Thank you. Do you have a third question?
Yes. Well, the protection of black cockatoos is just one example. There is so much legislation and regulations around about protecting the environment, and there is lots and lots of available scientific evidence as well protecting the environment. So how does the City of Swan show to meet its obligation regarding, for example, protecting black cockatoos?
Thank you. Mr. van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, the retention of trees that are foraging trees or nesting trees are captured through the other mechanisms of assessing structure plans. For instance, those trees are identified, so it's done through that. But then in regards to the cockatoo prevention or the cockatoo plan that we have on the agenda tonight, the actions out of that will then be very specific on what we do to protect those the species and then the foraging trees, and ensure that there's more of those trees will fall out of the action plan that is on the agenda tonight for council to make a decision on.
Do you have a fourth question?
In the main meeting, there was a question regarding the biodiversity action plan. The question was not my question, how many of the targets were achieved? The written answer by the council was, or by the city was, experience over time identified that achievement of the targets was outside the city's control. So my question is, what has the City of Swan done to achieve those targets?
Mr. van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, I think we can take that on notice and answer that. That will be answered through the follow-up report that will come to council, as I've discussed earlier in the previous response.
Thank you. And a fifth question?
This is more a note actually. Well, it's a question. On the 5th of June in the morning on Park Street, Hellenbroek, between Arpent Link and Panesh Way, the Brooklands development was dewatering with a hose across the road into a drain. The important part of that is what quality was that water sampled? what is the quality of the water? What do we know about this water? Because if that water goes in the drain and then it goes through the Brabant system into Panache wetlands, if it has acid in it or if it has nutrients in it, it could damage the wetlands. So my question is, did the developer have the permit to dewater there? If so, are there any results of water sampling available? And if not, what are the consequences for them?
Mr. Goyton, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I don't obviously have the answers to that at hand, but if you're able to provide us with those, the details of the exact time and location, perhaps I'll see you after the meeting. Yes, we can certainly follow up on that, but I'll take the question on notice.
Thank you very much for your questions, Mr. Bogart. We move to part 6, public statement time. And registration for public statement time at council meetings was required by 10 a.m. this morning on Wednesday the 11th of June 2025. Public statements are for general matters of the city and not for items on the agenda. We have one public statement. Ms. Smarter, Turner. 2 minutes. And you have 2 minutes.
It's a short one, don't worry. Madam Mayor, Councillor, and everyone who's listening tonight. On the 3rd of June, Councillor David Knight handed in his resignation. The reason I'm not allowed to discuss in this forum, but what I am here to say is thank you, Mr. Knight. Thank you for your service to our community. Thank you for trying to do the right thing. And thank you for consistently standing up for what you believe in. I'm not allowed, nor do we have time to review all of Mr. Knight's actions as a councillor. So I will ask the council and the people in the gallery to join me in thanking Mr. Knight with a round of applause. Thank you.
Okay. And move to part 7, which is petitions. I'll just ask someone if they can just turn that microphone off in the gallery there. Thank you. Or if we can. Oh, thank you very much, Dr. McQuaid. Part 7 petitions, we have had no petitions presented that need tabling at this meeting. And part 8 deputations, all deputations for items on the agenda were heard at the agenda forum held on the 4th of June 2025. And there are no announcements tonight, which we move to part 10, leave of absence. We have Councillor Howlett, 20th of August 2025 to the 4th of September 2025 inclusive. Councillor Bowman, 23rd of June 2025 until the 28th of June 2025 inclusive. I'll ask, are there any other council members requesting leave of absence? There aren't. I'll just ask if there's a mover, please. Councillor Zanino, and a seconder, sorry, was Councillor Jones. Is anyone against? No, it's carried. Thank you. And we move to part 11, confirmation of minutes. 11.1, confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 14th of May 2025. Can I also ask for a mover, please? Councillor Bowman, and a seconder was Councillor Jones did have it. Thank you. Is anyone against? No, that's carried. And part 12, business left over from the previous meeting, there was none. And we move to item 13, which is adoption of those recommendations contained in the items not withdrawn. For the benefit of the community members observing the meeting, the council uses an en bloc method of decision making. This means that the agenda items where council supports the officer recommendation are not debated separately. One vote is taken on all of the items and the officer recommendation is therefore the decision of the council. So the following items have not been withdrawn for individual consideration and will be dealt with via the en bloc vote. Therefore, the officer recommendation will be the decision of council. The 14.3.1, proposed amendment number 233 to local planning scheme number 17, delete various categories from Schedule 5A, exempted development. 14.4.2, which is the proposed permanent road closure to portion of Lexia Avenue Upper Swan. 14.5.1, financial management report for the period ending 30 April 2025. Item 14.5.2, which is the list of accounts paid April 2025. 14.5.3, sale of land, rates and charges outstanding for more than 3 years. 14.5.4, which is the sale of land, rates and charges outstanding for more than 3 years. 14.5.7 is the RFT 25LS28 SOR, construction of concrete infrastructure assets. 14.5.8, RFT 25RS22 SOR, provision of road, pavement and stabilisation services. 14.5.9, RFT 25PM19-SOR, provision of electrical services, separable parts. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Jones, and a seconder. We have a seconder, thank you, Councillor Podovnik. And is anyone against? No, that's carried. And move to part 14. Reports withdrawn for debate or absolute majority vote is required. The following reports have been withdrawn for debate and have an absolute majority vote in accordance with the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2023 and will be dealt with by Council individually. 14.1.1, which is the appointment of Deputy Presiding Member for the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, which is an absolute majority. The proposed motion from Councillor Bowman. Councillor Bowman, if you'd like to please read out your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I move that Council resolves to not appoint a Deputy Presiding Member of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee until October 2025, and the reason for the motion is the independent Deputy Presiding Member will be appointed by the end of October.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? So anyone against the motion, sorry? Do you wish to debate it? No? There's no councillor? Does anyone wish to speak? No, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? We have Councillor Catalano, Councillor Singh, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor Ringo. Sorry, was that your hand up there? Sorry, I couldn't see past. Yes, Councillor Ringo. And we're Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Podovnik, and those against? Sorry, Councillor Henderson, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Howlett, and myself. So the motion is carried. Did you have 8-4? 8-4. And we move to 14.1.2, which is the Annual Review of Delegations of Authority 2025. Requires an absolute majority. Proposed motion from Councillor Bowman. If you would like to please read out your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and just for the record, this is a combination of both mine and Councillor Henderson's motion. We were working together. So one, that Council resolves to adopt the amended delegation of authority from Council to the CEO, including Council-appointed authorised officers as attached, with the following amendment. A being my one, Delegation 23, Coordinated Community Safety is removed from the delegation, and B being Councillor Henderson's change, Delegation 29, include the following additional condition at statutory planning function delegation to the Chief Executive Officer, where applications, development and approval of land that is comprised within any of the rural zonings under Local Planning Scheme number 17, which are advertised in accordance with Clause 64 of the Scheme 2 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulation 2015. They will be advertised to owners and occupiers of properties in the vicinity of the proposed development in the following manner. A, for the land that is less than 2 hectares in area to all properties within 300 metres of the boundaries of the land, and B, for land that is greater than 2 hectares in area to all properties within 800 metres of the boundaries of the land. And then, as per the officer's recommendation, approve the amended guidelines, execution of city documents as attached. And the reasons for the motion is authority to institute and carry on proceedings should be limited to the manager and exec director roles. And 2, in rural areas, a 200 metre radius can impact the properties. Urban can see many residents notified.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone like to speak against? Do you wish to speak? Okay. Councillor Bowman. No. Councillor Henderson's the seconder.
Look, briefly, I'm more than satisfied that management should be dealing with Part A. and in Part B, we have problems with the rural areas where you could literally have just one adjacent block to a property that may be within 200 metres under the current rules. So this simply makes it more equitable for those rural properties that should be given notice where needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone like to speak against?
Yeah, I think in situations like this, which are quite technical, I really do think the CEO should be recommending to us what delegations of authority we should be approving. That's the reason I'm opposed to it. Who do you believe?
Thank you. Anyone like to speak for the motion? Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion or against the motion? If not, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, in response to Councillor Johnson, the CEO is available, I believe, any time to ask any technical information, and I believe he would have been available if Councillor Johnson had requested that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? So, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Singh, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, and myself. And those against? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Howlett. That's carried. 10-2. Now we move to 14.2.1, which is the MRS Amendment 1434, Part Lot 3, Midland Road, Hazelmere. Proposed motion by Councillor Howlett. Councillor Howlett, if you'd like to read out your motion.
Thank you. My motion is that Council resolve to 1. Note that the subject land was formerly used as a landfill for construction and demolition waste, and that 1. The Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, DEWA, advises that the amendment area is identified as a potential contaminated site. 2. Contaminated sites are addressed by a separate statutory process, the Contaminated Sites Act 2003. 2. Require the statutory process for contaminated sites under the Contaminated Sites Act 2003 be undertaken for the subject land. 3. Advise the WAPC that A. MRS Amendment 1434, as advertised, is supported following the completion of the statutory process for contaminated sites under the Contaminated Sites Act 2003 be undertaken. And B. Concurrent rezoning of the subject land to industrial development under the City of Swan Planning Scheme number 17 is supported. The reason for my motion is 1. The Midland Guildford ward is littered with contaminated sites and mounds of contaminated soil, each of which must be dealt with and remediated to avoid potential risk to human health and impacts on the environment. 2. It is noted that the City expects the subject site to require the statutory process for contaminated sites under the Contaminated Sites Act 2003 be undertaken for the subject land before it is used under the proposed new use industrial development to allow any future contamination of the site to be identified, including that caused it and the body responsible. Including the uses that caused it and the body responsible. And 3, as noted in the EPA assessment, the amendment area abuts Bush Forever Site number 481, Stirling Crescent Bushland Hazelmere, and Bush Forever Site number 213, Bushmead Bushland Swan, to the north, east and west. Future development may result in indirect impacts on the 2 Bush Forever sites and potential risk to human health from contamination.
Thank you, Councillor Howlett. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor? Does anyone like to speak against? If there's not, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Catalano? Is that it? Yep, just checking. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Howlett. And so in favour and those against? So we have Councillor Singh, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Brodovnik and myself. So the motion is lost.
At this stage, Madam Mayor,
Did I skip
no one
past?
flagged the officer's recommendation.
Again,
And that piece, having flagged the office, no one flagged the officer's recommendation. Now, if I may, the standard, Madam Mayor, the standard protocol is if no one's flagged the officer's recommendation during debate, we move to the next item. The literal interpretation in the standing orders, I think, uses the word the presiding member may call on another council member to move the officer's recommendation. Just trying to find the piece. Foreshadow motions. So under foreshadowed motions, under 8.27, where no alternate motion is foreshadowed, which hasn't, the presiding member may invite a member to move the officer's recommendation. So literally you have that authority. It's not how we have dealt with in the past. It's not how you've dealt with in the past, but it is open to you as presiding member if you wish. If not, we move on to the next item. I think the effect of not making any decision on this, if the matter still goes to WAPC without any councillor comment on it, Mr. Vendler.
Madam Mayor, it's a comment by officers that will then be provided to the commission.
That's the effect of what we've just
okay.
dealt with.
And I will ask if there's anyone who'd like to foreshadow the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Jones. And is it to any seconder? I don't have any seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ringo. Is there anyone against?
Does anyone want to speak to?
Or would like to speak to? Deputy Mayor? Councillor Bowman? Oh no, I thought he wanted to speak. He's going to jump on that. So, goes back.
Is there, you have a mover and a seconder. We've
Yep.
dealt with that now.
And
So
we have
the officer's
recommendation, and then Deputy Mayor would like to speak against. So then the mover,
the mover was Councillor Jones,
Mhm.
seconder was Councillor Ringo.
would you like to speak to? And seconder? No? Okay. Deputy Mayor, you'd like to speak against?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, the reason I'm opposed to this, I think, to let this slip through, this contaminated site slip through and just become rezoned from rural is inappropriate without it being remediated. Councillors, the Midland Guildford ward is littered with contaminated sites that have not been remediated. So I'll just try and think of a few now. The worst one is the waste control site in Bellevue, then there is the Omex site in Bellevue, then there is the Adelaide Street tip on the border of Kalamunda in Hazelmere, then there is the tip opposite Bunnings on the other side of Lloyd Street, which contains the contaminated waste from the workshops. Then there is the large contaminated site alongside the river, where we attempted to establish the Riverside Park that is extending from Woodbridge, but it turned out to be so expensive we couldn't remediate it. There's the BMX track in South Guildford. I'm starting to run out of them, but I know there are an awful lot more than that. And councillors, how did I get my information about these? I didn't actually get it in this council chamber. In nearly every case, members of the community came to me and told me about these sites, and I went and looked at them, and then I actually read up about it. I do not believe we should be rezoning a contaminated site. I think it needs to stay in its current zoning. The proper process is to fix it. There are people who make a living doing this. I think we've got Mr. Moltoni, who's I think well known to council, is the guy who wants to remediate the Adelaide Street tip, which I believe is just about the worst one we've got, that's the proper process. It's remediated, and then associated with the remediation is a rezoning. I'm doing my best to rack my brains for other contaminated sites, but there are an awful lot more. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Councillor Howlett?
Thank you. The other site you forgot, Councillor Johnson, was this one that we're dealing with tonight. It's time this issue was addressed and the contaminated sites in the Midland Guildford ward that have not been remediated are correctly dealt with. It's simply not good enough to take the approach that because it's already contaminated, it doesn't need remediation as it's going to be used for light industrial purposes. How will authorities ever be able to assess the compliance of future operators on that site if the site is not remediated prior to the change of use? How can we be sure that the Bush Forever site that borders this are not receiving leach contaminants? How can we be sure that the contaminants are not leaching into the water table? The Midland Guildford ward is not a dumping ground for contaminated waste to be left in perpetuity. This is not the expectations of the community, and therefore I'm highlighting this site to be remediated before the change of use, as is the proper process to follow.
Thank you, Councillor Howlett. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Bowman?
Sorry, I was waiting for you to go for. Madam Mayor, I couldn't support the previous motion, but I can't support this motion either. And the reason is, Madam Mayor, perhaps I'm getting old and don't like change, but no one foreshadowed the officer's recommendation. The motion was lost, and out of principle, I can't support this motion now.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak for or against? If not, you're right to reply. Okay, I'll put that to vote. Those in favour? Councillor Singh, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, and Councillor Henderson, Councillor Brodovnik, and myself. And those against? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Zanino, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Howlett. The motion, oops, what was that, sorry? 7-5. Carry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-5. Thank you. And we move to item 14.2.2, MRS Amendment 1141, North Ellenbrook East. Proposed motion from Councillor Bowman. If you'd like to read out your motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm just firstly looking for advice because I would have thought the entire recommendation would have been on the screen, but my recommendation is support the proposed amendment as per the officer's recommendation with the following addition. Inform the WAPC that the city supports the EPA position on both the formalisation of the proposed expanded local reserve areas and identification of the potential additional POS area, including on lot 8247 and 35, Sawpit Road, be included as additional criteria for the lifting of urban deferment. And the reason for the alternative is to take into consideration the concern raised in the deputation last week and ensure the long-term supply of POS and retention of native vegetation and inland wetlands in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you, Councillor Howlett. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, from the onset, you were there as well, the Bulbulsbrook Residents and Ratepayers Association. Just noting that this is in the suburb or the address of Bullsbrook, although we refer to it as North Ellenbrook East. Madam Mayor, I'm not going to talk about the interchange. I think this council has said enough times to the powers above that we don't have the capacity. But Madam Mayor, one of the things that was raised was the minimum 10% POS and a couple of other areas that should be included. Madam Mayor, we don't need to water all our POS. I'm not talking a nice green oval here. POS can be other types of POS that doesn't include water. So we need to start looking at things differently. But Madam Mayor, I took into consideration the issues that were raised in the deputation, and I think this strengthens that. What I do want to actually say to council is, councillors, we're only recommending. We're not the decision makers. And when you say no, sometimes you get the complete opposite. So here's our chance to actually say yes, but with some conditions. And that's what I'm doing on this one, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll ask, is anyone against the motion? Councillor Howlett. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with everything Councillor Bowman has said, and the last bit is if we don't say anything, then there's no chance of us getting anything added. So it's important that we do get this through.
Thank you. I'll ask, is anyone against? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Far from saying nothing, I have a alternate motion, should this one fail, that says a lot. Councillors, from the officer's recommendation provided in the original motion, it is clear that there are many areas that have caused concern to staff, and many of these concerns were slated to be dealt with at a later planning stage. However, I think it's important that we plan the urban growth corridor as a whole and not as fragmented sites. This is the opportunity we have as council, as elected members, to make our views known. Because later, when it gets to the planning stages, it's often out of our hands, and many of those decisions can be dealt with under delegated authority. What we recommend to approve here tonight has very real impact. We need to understand the very real risk that this council faces if we continue to view the development in this urban growth corridor in a piecemeal, fragmented way. We don't have to go much further back than tonight's agenda to read about the issues currently being faced by residents related to changes in groundwater levels reported to be caused by developments at Bradham and Dayton in the southern part of the urban growth corridor. Flooding, insufficient downstream infrastructure, inappropriate drainage. These are very real concerns. And there are very real concerns that the same methodology is intended to be used in North Ellenbrook East development, where lies much of the same geological and hydrological features of the Bradham and Dayton, typical of the Swan Coastal Plain. Councillors, if we vote to support the MRS amendment as it stands, then there is a very real future financial risk to the city's ratepayers for potential insurance damage claims from rising groundwater, such as those being experienced by residents now. There is a very real risk to the survival of the Western Swamp tortoise due to the water table changes associated with landfill. This tortoise requires seasonally inundated clay pans that have standing water in it from June to November. There is a very real risk to the conservation category wetlands and the Eucyclops editae, which is a tiny little crustacean that are actually being studied there, that are restricted in distribution and only found in a particular area. There is a very real risk to the survival of the critically endangered threatened ecological communities reliant on the inundation of fresh water in winter and spring. There is a very real risk to the survival of the endangered Carnaby's black cockatoo and the vulnerable forest red-tailed black cockatoo due to the loss of tens of thousands of mature trees that make up their habitat and food. Councillors, when you know better, you do better. It is beholden on us to raise these concerns with the state government. It is dependent on us to ensure sustainable and balanced development happens in the City of Swan. It is dependent on us to not support this MRS amendment with the potential risks it poses to the city's ratepayers and the very survival of the threatened flora and fauna dependent on the sustainable and balanced development of the Swan Coastal Plain. I urge you to not support Councillor Bowman's motion. Allow my alternate to rise and be heard, when you can support sending this very strong message to the WAPC and the state government.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howlett. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Does anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Sometimes you have to say no, and there's so many reasons why we have to say no in this case. We have to say no because we don't want rezoning to urban for another treeless heat sink suburb to add to the sprawl. Last year, Sarah Brooks in WA Today wrote, "A major problem on Perth's fringe could see the city haunted by ghost suburbs, where treeless residential on the urban fringe is abandoned as climate change and water scarcity makes them vulnerable, less habitable, inhospitable, and unattractive to live in. Along with nature clearing, the same old tired 1950s suburban house and package sprawl model continues because of an insatiable, ravenous appetite for easy profits now, subsidised by the taxpayer. Curtin University Sustainability Policy Institute estimated every new dwelling on the urban fringe costs $90,000 compared to similar infill dwellings. There's mounting evidence, as we've heard tonight, that in future there may also be huge, maybe even insurmountable costs from alterations in hydrology leading to damage of properties of adjacent landowners. If the same methodology is applied as has been done in the South Ellenbrook area, then there could be some real problems brewing. And as we've heard tonight, the City of Swan is responsible for making good adverse conditions. I don't agree that the city and its residents and ratepayers should have to pay, or I don't even believe they can afford to pay. Furthermore, it's crazy to rely on 20-year-old studies and conclusions to inform this rezoning, when we all know that climate and environmental conditions have changed. We have entered a hotter, drier climate. Tens of thousands of trees in the city alone have been cleared or have died, and wetland habitats destroyed or altered. In Ellenbrook East, there is an extremely high level of significant environmental risk to, particularly the Bush Forever reserves, the conservation category wetlands, and Turtle Swamp with its critically endangered turtles. We just don't know that the methodology for basically filling in these swamplands is going to work. It doesn't seem to have worked south of Ellenbrook. I don't think that we shouldn't go ahead and approve rezoning if we don't know it's going to work north of Ellenbrook. This is clearly an unsustainable 21st century outcome that this council should not leave as its legacy. It's not a relevant consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 3 minutes. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Henderson.
Councillors, I'm supporting this motion on one basis. And if we say no, there's a whole stack of reasons why Councillor Howlett might consider as a reason to say no, but I think most of those reasons, in fact, will be dealt with by the WAPC. But there's one fundamental reason that I'm standing here saying no, and it's touched on in Councillor Howlett's proposed motion, which is 5.5, conservation of category wetlands. Well, that basically brings into question of the whole water system. If you look around this walls here, you'll see a common photo of a councillor, David Fairdig. He and I fought the issues on water in the then Albion town, and we made a good case that those palace plains would be a disaster under development. Well, I think actually we've been proven right, because developer says, yeah, we'll fix it, all very nice. They go in there and they make their plans, but then they've flooded out properties to the east, and we're seeing similar problems in Dayton, where the water level, the issues there have remained very high through a dry summer, as deputations have been given. So the key thing here is that the water issues are the ones that concern me the most. Whilst it's related, Caversham Air Base, we'll see land raised probably a metre, 1,200 mils. We're going to see that Bush Forever site effectively flooded out from high water levels if it's not managed properly. So what I'm effectively saying here is that we have a big problem with water issues, and I see exactly those same issues in that Palace Plain area north of Ellenbrook. Simply, we raise the water levels through those Palace Plains through to the Tortoise Swamp area. There's going to be multiple downstream impacts which clearly will impact trees and the swamp itself. So I simply say we need to give WAPC a message that this must be dealt with rather than just simply glossed over, it'll be okay. We have got to do the studies, we've got to do the thorough hydrology, we've got to know exactly what we're going into before we go to deferred urban. And so for those reasons, I think we do need to say no at this stage. And when that is completely sorted, we should be able to say to people, okay, we're satisfied now, it's dealt with, then we can proceed. Not until then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'll ask, would anyone like to speak for the motion? Does anyone like to speak against the motion? No? You're right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, can I just confirm for councillors, we aren't approving anything tonight. Councillor Howard said we're approving. No, we're not. We're recommending to WAPC. WAPC takes recommendations from a lot of people. Whether they listen to those people or not is another thing. We talked about don't want rezoning. Councillor Catalano, don't want rezoning. The urban sprawl. Yet I believe it was only last night referring to the homeless people camping in Midland. Where are these people going to live? There's that balancing act, especially when some people don't want to go up. We don't want TODs. I heard that ratepayers shouldn't have to pay, can't afford to pay. I'm looking at this motion. I'm looking at the financial implications. What are we asking ratepayers to pay? Or are we going 10 steps down the road and thinking what might be happening from the doom and gloom debate that I heard? We have to do the studies. We have to do other things I heard from Councillor Henderson. No, Councillor Henderson, we're not developing this land. WAPC is not developing this land. But what is this item is about is WAPC asking us what we think. Councillors, there's a balancing act. There always will be a balancing act. Councillors, I think there should be more than 10% POS in this one. And not the POS that this council, this city has done before, including the middle of a roundabouts. But it doesn't need to be watered, which takes out the first issue. But councillors, look at what we are asked today. We are asked about advising WAPC. Please, please don't be misguided and think we're required to pay for anything, that we are approving anything. And this reality of a future risk. Well, I'm not the lawyer on council, and I know there's two apparently qualified have done legal studies. But councillors, what is that future risk? We're not approving it. And these are a number of issues that the officers have said will be looked at in future stages.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll now put that to the vote. Those in favour? So we had Councillor Singh, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, and Councillor Pridovnik, and myself. Those against? Councillor Catalano, Councillor McCulloch, and Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Howlett. So my casting vote will be in favour of the motion. So the motion is carried. 6 all. It makes it 7-6. Yep. So that was carried 7-6. Thank you. Now we move to item 14.2.3, which is the response to councillors' motions, Black Cockatoo support activities. Proposed motion from Councillor McCulloch. Councillor McCulloch, if you'd like to read out your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. My motion for the response to councillor motion Black Cockatoo support activities, the council resolved to, 1, in regards to supporting the long-term protection and sustainability of the Carnaby's Black Cockatoo across the city in response to its June 22 resolution on a motion on the topic. A, to note the outcomes of the investigation of resolutions 1 and 2. B, that resolution 3A and 3B, dot points 1, 2 and 3 be addressed by the Murdoch University Black Cockatoo Conservation Action Plan. C, that resolution 3B, dot point 4 and 3C, D and E be investigated to determine outcomes in conjunction with the implementation of the Murdoch University Black Cockatoo Conservation Action Plan. 2, that staff undertake consultation on the Murdoch University Action Plan in full for a 3-month period commencing July 25 to develop specific actions achievable this financial year, 25-26, and to plan a comprehensive longer-term project for future years that will fulfil the requirements of the original councillor motion Black Cockatoo support activities. 3, that staff engage with the City of Swan's existing list of community groups, such as the resident associations, environmental groups and friends groups, to consult on the Conservation Action Plan. This will include identifying locations for conservation action and a plan to map out the City of Swan for the full action plan. 4, that the City engages with A, Murdoch University and B, Carnaby's Crusaders to gauge interest in working with the City and the community groups to facilitate points 1B and C, 2 and 3 as noted above. The reasons for the motion: 1, there is a recognition that despite good intentions, previous plans have not been effective and a new approach is required. 2, given that the report has been 3 years in the making, with the Murdoch University CAP delivered 6 months ago, it is unreasonable to only allow a week to review. 3, the officer's recommendation does not clearly define actions, including costing and resourcing this financial year for all areas in my original motion, except in watering troughs, and does not clearly define actions, including costing and resourcing for the next financial year for all actions in the original motion. 4, a longer term plan is required to complete the actions as per the Murdoch University CAP. This includes core business funding to maintain the capacity to deliver the outcomes and objectives of the motion, the survival of the black cockatoo species. And lastly, 5, the expectation is that the community will provide much of the volunteer labour to achieve successful outcomes as noted in the CAP, and to do this and to maintain long-term involvement, it must be engaged. The easiest way to achieve this is by investment in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones? Is anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Move to Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we made a great start, but my original motion 3 years ago has a long way to go. And the motion here before you this evening pinpoints, details and elaborates on aspects that need to be considered and that need to be a springboard to actually realising efficient, specific and strategic outcomes for the black cockatoos within the City of Swan. Councillors, it is absolutely imperative that we take hold of each and every aspect that has been outlined here, and that we utilise the community groups and the stakeholders with their local knowledge and expertise to engage and allow them to form part of a group. And within the consultation that my motion entails, it will ensure that we have ownership in a process. we have expertise to ensure the longer term success of conservation for our black cockatoos, and that we have ongoing commitment from our community through true, tried, tested consultation that ensures the commitments longer term as well. Councillors, it is important that each aspect is addressed, and that is what is done in this motion. And I do admire and thank Councillor Catalano for her alternative, but I do believe this is comprehensive in response to my initial motion, and with the input from the groups that are detailed, and with continued liaison with Murdoch University, we can see a way forward that is absolutely practical and that will ensure that things are being done. Councillors, we see with so many of our decisions the challenges that we have as a local government, the federal and state implications, the fact that we can make comment, or if we say no, it opens us up to potential implications there. But we've got to start putting our foot down. We've got to start making sure that what we are doing is tangible, and it is a roll up our sleeves and get things done for the benefit of our community, and more importantly for the benefit of our environment. And if we don't start making those deliberate actions and taking those actions, then I'm not sure where our future lies. Please support my motion so we can move along.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. I'll ask Councillor Joseph, seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's 3 years since the initial motion, and we haven't really achieved much to date. We need to change direction, so I believe it's really important to bring on the experts on board with us, like the uni, Murdoch Uni and the Carnaby Crusaders. Let's not wait any longer. They're important birds for us.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll ask, is anyone against? Yes, thank you. Councillor Catalano.
Yes, well, this is quite a complicated alternative where the actual solutions are very, very simple. And I don't know why we're putting things off and asking for more reports, because the situation for these cockatoos is dire and things need to be done now. I mean, practical, real things need to be done. And on page 63, the Murdoch report is clear. To avoid further loss of the 3 species of black cockatoos, the City of Swan must, 1, on page 19, acknowledge marri, jarrah, coastal blackbutt, macadamia and pine trees are food trees, along with banksias and hakeas, which are small to medium food trees. And that on page 3, marris are the only primary food source for all 3 cockatoo species. 2, on page 16, as the highest priority to halt lack of food for cockatoos, we have to protect and retain all mature forage trees as a high priority and retain existing vegetation corridors. And create additional food resources, page 18, page 30 and page 42. Plant marris on road verges to create new habitat corridors at a height to avoid vehicle strike. 4, page 53. Hakeas and banksias provide food sources, but they are too low in built-up areas and they make the birds vulnerable to vehicle strike. And I've seen this myself in Suffolk Street, Caversham. Page 37. Retain very old mature trees as night roosts and ensure that there are food trees and water nearby. And these roost trees can also be in areas adjacent to where there may be development occurring, such as the Henley Brook Avenue, that is a City of Swan project, and that there are roost trees that have been identified, not in this report, but by the community. They need to be protected, and the food sources and the water around them. Now, I've been saying this for years, and I've been derided on this council when I've when I've asked for Merry trees to be planted. And all kinds of excuses have been brought up, but here it is in this report. There is no other way. It is as clear as a bell, and it's what I've been saying all along. Mature Merry trees have to stop being cut down at least for the next 15, 20 or even 50 years while we're waiting for the ones that we're planting now to grow, to become food sources and to become roosting trees.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. And I'll ask, does anyone like to speak for the motion? Is anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, councillors, I find this trying to decide between which of the alternate motions challenging. Councillor Catalano's alternate motion has a lot of merit, but Councillor McCullough's motion is there first, and it was Councillor McCullough who originally raised this issue. Councillors, rather than discuss the technical aspect of it, I'll just tell you what I've observed since I moved to the area. I noticed years ago that red-tailed black cockatoos that I'd never seen before in my life were foraging in my neighbour's Cape lilac trees. And after observing them over several years, I concluded they had to be pretty desperate to fly from wherever they lived to forage in those trees. But then my neighbour chopped them down. So may just want a significant source of food for that particular group of red-tailed black cockatoos that are forest cockatoos that must have come a long way, desperately looking for food. We need to do something. I'll support Councillor McCullough's motion, and if that doesn't get up, I'll support Councillor Catalano's alternate motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll ask, does anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Much like Councillor Deputy Mayor Johnson, I'm torn between the two motions. I do respect that this is in response to that this originally was Councillor McCullough's motion, and I would ordinarily grant her the respect of having the of supporting this motion in respect. However, Councillor Catalano is absolutely right. We do not have time on our hands. We cannot wait any longer. We're about to, by passing the previous motion to recommend that we approve the North Ellenbrook East development, there goes tens of thousands of trees. This is what we're faced with. The reality of an urban growth corridor is going to bite us very quickly. We don't have 10 years, we don't have 20 years, we don't have 30 years. The time is now. So as much as I respect Councillor McCullough's motion, and part of me hopes it gets up, but the reality is Councillor Catalano's motion and her speech gave me lots of thought on the matter, and we need to act now. We need to be decisive, we need to be clear, and we need to plant marries, and we need to stop the destruction of our mature trees.
Thank you, Councillor Howlett. I'll just ask for the last call. Does anyone like to speak for the motion? Question?
Madam Mayor, question to you, or through you to probably the CEO. Just checking, if Councillor McCullough's motion is lost, can Councillor Catalano's motion be considered, albeit they are got different things, they are actually both endorsing the same plan?
Mr. CEO? Good question. Maybe check.
Look, I suppose we'll get to that point in a minute, Councillor Bowman. They are not identical. One seeks to defer the adoption, the other one seeks to endorse the guiding action, so they are different in their own construct. Councillor Catalano or Howell, I can't recall whom, did clearly foreshadow their alternate motion during the discussion, so I think it is open to come back and consider it.
Okay. Councillors ask anyone like to speak for the motion? Anyone like to speak against the motion? If not, Councillor McCulloch, you're right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, it's not a complicated alternative. It just very clearly and very specifically unpacks what needs to be done from this point with the motion and from the officer's report. I'm not asking for more reports, no. We're asking for community input from knowledgeable, local and committed community volunteers and groups to actually get a workable, practicable plan off the ground that has complete ownership and therefore longevity. 3 months is not a long time to allow that to happen, and I know we have groups ready and mobilised to be part of those discussions instantly. We can unpack further specific details. The CAP is comprehensive, but in some instances it's not always City of Swan specific. So those nuances need to be unpacked, and our local knowledge will certainly do that. Aspects of Councillor Catalano's amendments will, I'm sure, definitely form part of the discussions and the outcomes. They are important. I've noted them here. But for the longer term success, we need to incorporate those important factors and work with other parts as well. We need to get this right, councillors, and with the genuine partnerships, working with those stakeholders and community groups, we will. I urge you to support my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. I'll now put that to the vote. Those in favour? So we had Councillor Catalano, Councillor Singh, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Podovnik, Deputy Mayor Johnson, Councillor Howlett and myself, and those against? Oh, just Councillor Bowman. The motion is carried. 11-1. Okay. Councillors, move to 14.5.5. Now it's 7:23. I'll just check in the back. Sorry? No, we're going to 14.5.5. Where's that gone? Oh, right, maybe hang on. Yeah, just one moment, councillors. Yep, just hang on. It might not be in order here. Let me just see, I might be missing a page in there. Okay. Just, that's fine. We'll just pop that up. Can we put that one up on the screen? Yep. So we'll move to 14.4.1, traffic management, Brookmount Drive and Arbour Drive, Ellenbrook, and Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, move that Council resolves to, as per the officer's recommendation, to note that data indicates that the raised platforms installed at Arbour Drive have helped reduce speed and vehicle volumes to, as per the officer's recommendation, to note the post-construction traffic count for Brookmount Drive will be undertaken once signage and line markings are completed, with the results presented to the ward councillors. 3, request for further LATM devices as proposed in the study to implement in future years in accordance with the city budget process. And 4, request the staff liaise with the Pearce Ward councillors to identify high priority recommendations from the LATM to be included in the draft 26-27 capital budget. And the reason for the motion: the amount of vehicles per day on both Arbour Drive and Brookmount Drive are still carrying in excess of 200% more than the maximum desirable volume of 3,000 vehicles per day.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones, thank you. Is anyone against? Nope. Councillor Howlett, do you wish to debate it? No. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this has been a process that's been going on for 3 years. It's taken quite a while. I thank staff and council when they gave their support the second time round on this item. However, councillors, for those who are aware of these two streets, they are a rat run in Ellenbrook. They were carrying over 9,000 vehicles a day and are designed for 3,000 vehicles. the results indicate that things have slowed down. However, the LATM report that came to this council, came to the ward councillors, proposed a number of recommendations. These recommendations weren't mine, they weren't the staff. These were done by experienced professional consultant that said there was a number of things that needed to be done. We didn't do all those. Now, some of the residents didn't want a few things, but councillors, this is still a significant problem. We need to look at it. I would love to have seen money go in this coming budget. I know we're finishing a few things off, but we can't just go, we've done our best, because if that's the case, our best is not good enough. We need to look at further things to implement. The benefit of this additional part of the motion will give 12 months for Jim and his team to have a bit more of a look at it. We can see exactly what the impacts are, and you never know, we may get that second right-hand turn at the traffic lights.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Jones is the seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for those that are not familiar with Brookmount Drive, there are now, Councillor Bowman has covered most of the stuff, but the additional stuff I need to add in is on the other side of the road at the Brookmount roundabout is now another 7, 8, 10 large shops. Brookmount Drive goes through to Annie's Landing. It's a shortcut. Can you imagine the traffic that's going to start coming through there, even with having the ones on the old shops on the other side of the road? They're already, the cars, you can't even get through there at the moment. It's crazy. So I think we need to act now before the other shops open. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Will ask anyone like to speak against the motion? Does anyone like to speak for the motion? I'll ask the last. Anyone against the motion? Anyone for the motion? No, you're right of reply. Oh, that's fine. So I'll just put that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Singh, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor and myself, and those against. It's Councillor Hallett. Most carried, 11-1. Okay, we're going to move back to 14.5.5, which is the Sundra debt write-off. And I'll just remind councillors that it is an absolute, it's withdrawn for absolute vote. So I need a council member to move the officer's recommendation in the event. So, Councillor Bowman. Sorry? Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones had your hand up first. Happy? Thank you. Does anyone want to speak against? No. So it's carried. Move to 14.5.6, which is the budget review 2024-25, which is withdrawn again for absolute vote. I need a council member to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor McCulloch and a seconder. Councillor Ringo. Thank you. Is anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you. Councillor Ringo.
Who is against?
Councillor Bowman, but doesn't wish to speak. So.
He doesn't want to debate it.
No.
Anybody else wish to speak, Madam?
No. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Nothing, move straight to the vote.
No. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Singh, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Howlett and myself. Those against? Councillor Bowman.
Councillor Catalano hasn't voted.
Oh. Can you go back?
No, as long as she confirms it's 4.
Yes, I just said. Okay, so we had 11, it was carried 11-1, thank you. Okay. We'll move on to part 15, which is motions of which previous notice has been given. 15.1, Councillor Henderson, use of City of Swan Crest. If you'd like to read out your notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I move that Council resolve to 1, request CEO prepare a report that considers amendments to the City Policy C133, use of City of Swan logo and civic crest, including 1, predominantly include the City of Swan crest on the outside of all buildings of Swan Public, on the outside of all City of Swan public buildings, get it right. 2, the City of Swan crest to be on all locality signs. 3, City of Swan logo to be used for City of Swan administration or operational matters. And 4, identify the financial implications for subsequent budget adjustments where changes would be required to buildings and locality signs that do not comply to the policy. And the reason for the motion is policy needs to be refined to clearly detail the use of the council crest and the administration logo. The crest is a symbol of the City of Swan.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zanino? Is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you, Councillor Haller. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, councillors. Open the microphone. Simply, councillors, we're seeing a conflict at the moment. We have the Shire office. It's a City of Swan facility. You see the crest representing this council. Behind that screen there, that's been there for a long time, is a large crest. And I sometimes wonder why that was put there to cover the crest up. But in any case, the bottom line is that we're seeing a merging starting to happen between the two, whereas we are very clearly separate. And that's the key here. You look at the localities. The localities are the City of Swan, which we are the head of. So we shouldn't be seeing our logo on locality signs. So if you look all around the city, you'll see the majority of them are in fact the crest, and there's been a new change towards the logo. And the logo is there for a reason. It's to represent the administration and what it does. We have to follow proper protocol, and that's what this is about. It's about making that clear. And I think we need to be very clear about, in the public eye, about what is it that we're seeing. Are we seeing administration, or are we seeing the overall picture, which is the council? The council is the hierarchy, and that's what we should be doing. Now, I recognise that there will be some monetary implications, and in fact, we may want to separate some minor buildings out and just simply don't badge them, if you want to use the right term. But that would come from a report. That's what I'm asking for, is to get some idea of what the implications might be. This was triggered particularly when I saw the images of our new leisure centre in Ellenbrook. It didn't have the crest on it, and I thought that just didn't work. And of course, same down in Midland, and probably Altone and Ballajora haven't taken note. So it's time to realign and get the priorities right, and hopefully the report will be able to give us a bit of detail and get some idea of where we should head. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Zanino as the seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I think Councillor Henderson has covered it quite adequately. All I wish to say is that Councillor Henderson's motion is merely asking for the CEO to prepare a report and amendments, identify any financial implications, and obviously once this report is ready, it would come back to us as councillors to have a look at it and endorse it, or, refuse it. So basically, I urge you to support this because I think it's a worthy cause.
Thank you, Councillor Zanino. I'd like to speak against the motion. Councillor Howlett.
Councillors, the conflict we have here is really between the expectations of the community and what we're delivering. Councillor Henderson says it's time to get the priorities right. Well, I think the public perception would be that this is an act of self-importance, and I don't think it's going to be particularly well perceived out in the public. It is so far removed from the priorities and the expectations of the residents and ratepayers of the City of Swan. It's not going to improve service, it's not going to improve operations, and I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hallett. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Councillor Bowman first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I support it because I can't wait for this report to come back and for me to have a debate with Councillor Henderson, because we probably will have a different view on the crest. So I won't go into the debate of is the crest old, is it a good marketing tool or anything like that, because I hope the report that will come back will indicate those things. When the report comes back, I will then be able to look at what the officers have researched, and then I can have that debate with Councillor Henderson on that time, because I expect around this table we'll all have different views on using the crest or not using the crest. It may be depending on if you're a little bit older or a little bit younger, I don't know, but that's what a report will do, so I look forward to it, and that's why I'll support Councillor Henderson's report request.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll ask, does anyone like to
Question.
speak against the question?
Yeah, I've got a question. How much effort is involved in producing this report? So
Sorry?
to say, how much effort, as in person days, is going to be required?
Might shoot that. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. It will take some time because if we're going to do a comparative position to other local governments and how they use their crest, we come back and can talk about contemporary branding, which will be part and parcel of the analysis. So it won't be back next month.
Okay, and I'll ask, does anyone like to speak against the motion? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, councillors, I've never liked the City of Swan logo, but when I got elected, I thought I'm never ever going to get involved in trying to rebrand the city or change the way we handle our sort of marketing logos. I see we have a crest and we have a logo. I've never quite understood why we've got both. If you want my opinion, I think the Swan crest is much better to look at than the logo. The logo looks to me like graffiti, and I think there have been occasions when people have called out the graffiti squad to remove it. Councillors, I just think this is unnecessary, and it strikes me as something similar to happened in another government, where a government minister was accused of all she ever achieved was to change the logo on the headed notepaper. I think it's along those lines. I just don't think we need to do this, so I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Bowman said, it could be something to do with the elderly, but I'm fairly elderly and I think it's a good idea. I'm actually young at heart, so I could be both. Crests and logos, they serve as powerful visual representations of any organisation's identity, history and values. Swan Active logo depicts a part of the city's identity, however the crest is the initial identity. Branding is important. Rather than have a whole lot of different stuff, I think we should still have, when the report comes back, I'll argue this one too, I think we should have the crest as our initial identity, and whatever comes under that is subsidiary, is secondary. Thank you for the word. Secondary to the crest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll ask again. Councillors, does anyone like to speak against the motion? Is there anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? No? You're right to reply.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Councillors, go back quite a number of years when the idea of a logo was introduced for the City of Swan. there was a great big powwow, and we all sat around and came up with ideas. And there was someone that came up with this crazy-looking thing that looked a little bit like the river Shire of Swan. Unfortunately, it had very bad overtones with a European country. The bottom line is that we came up ultimately with what was referred to as the spider. It's a logo. Well, logos can be a coffee mug mark on a piece of paper. They can be anything. But the thing is, they are branding for a particular purpose. And the idea is to brand the City of Swan, the administration, so it's very clear that it is the City of Swan. Now, one thing picked my eye this evening. In the past, I've seen councillors with a coat on with the crest on it. Councillor Jones has a jacket on tonight that has the logo on it. Now, is she representing the council or is she representing the City of Swan? These are the differences, or the differential, if you like, between the two. And that comes down to our overall branding of what we are and what the city is. So that's what this is all about. I really think we should wait for that fun time when it comes back, Councillor Bowman, and because there's a lot more to cover on this. But the fact of the matter is that it isn't about graffiti, it isn't about self-importance, it's about fact. It's about, this is the board, this is the overarching body, and that is represented by the crest. Full stop, the end. And I think we need to make that clear in policy. Policy is a bit grey on that. At the moment, people drive around, they see the logo on Dayton as an example, and then go into West Swan and they see the crest. Confusing arguments to the residents. So those sort of things should be resolved, and hence the reason to ask for a report. I think every time we ask for a report, it takes officer time, and that's a key. Yes, it takes time, but those officers are there to support what the council is looking for. That's why we have motions to deal with, and staff prepare information for us in response, which we all appreciate very much, and hopefully we can get on with this and get a report for a future discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? So we had Councillor Catalano, Councillor Singh, Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Prodovnik, and myself. And those against? Just had Deputy Mayor and Councillor Howlett. So it's carried 10-2. There we go. Thank you. We move to 15.2. This is Councillor Catalano's Henley Brook Avenue Environmental Assessment, but I'll just ask Councillor Henderson, who will have to vacate the chamber while this matter is presented. Okay, Councillor Catalano, if you'd like to read out your notice of motion, please.
That Council resolve to put on hold all works on Hennybrook Avenue from Asturian Drive to Park Street until the environmental assessment agreed to at the March ordinary meeting of Council has been completed for the entire length of the proposed road. Reason for the motion: 1. At the March 2025 ordinary meeting of Council, Council agreed that the CEO undertake an independent environmental assessment of the whole of the alignment of the proposed Henley Brook Avenue south of Asturian Drive to Reed Highway, with involvement of Swan Valley residents and ratepayers and Urban Bushland Council. 2. To continue the clearing and roadworks on the section of Henley Brook Avenue from Asturian Drive to Park Street would be contrary to Council's decision on March 2025 to undertake an environmental assessment along the whole of the Henley Brook Avenue alignment, including Asturian Drive to Park Street. 3. The community now expects that an environmental assessment will be undertaken in accordance with the March 2025 resolution of Council. 4. Failure to determine the extent of the environmental damage from loss of biodiversity and bushland, foraging and habitat trees for endangered cockatoos and pollution of St Leonard's Creek waterway poses financial and reputational risks to the city.
Thank you very much, Councillor Catalano. I'll have to have a seconder. Councillor Howlett. And do I have anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Catalano.
The issue before us tonight appears to be a contest between infrastructure and jobs and the environment. A lot is made about economic development, money and contracts in the officer's report, but the city has public documents with commitments and strategies in line with state, national and international conventions for protecting the environment. The community expect the city conforms to its own environmental strategies and action plans, particularly in regard building its own infrastructure projects such as Henley Brook Avenue. The proposal to continue clearing and roadworks for Henley Brook Avenue between Asturian Drive to Park Street without an environmental assessment is premature and creates environmental risks such as major loss of Carnaby cockatoo habitat and food source with at least 10s or 20 or 50 or it's a lot of trees, roosting and foraging trees lined up for destruction. The clearing may not comply, therefore, with Commonwealth Government referral guidelines for 3 of these threatened black cockatoo species, or with, in fact, the city's own future cockatoo action plan. And we've heard tonight about how important trees, even particularly along this bit of Asturian Drive to Park Street, have got roosting trees and they've got foraging trees. It's financially and socially responsible before the destruction of trees and vegetation progresses for the project to be assessed for the effects from alteration of the hydrology, also through dewatering and flooding on adjacent landowners, and also for potential acidification of St Leonard's Brook. The City of Swan Council have a responsibility to ensure the city will not have significant damages claims in the future made out from the costs of not stopping and assessing the project now. Future costs may just pale into insignificance compared to, what these, the current amount of contracts that we've got in place and what have you. And yes, the future damages can be real and they will be very expensive if what we're hearing is true. And that's why we need the investigations. Any investigation of St Leonard's Creek that was undertaken in 2020 is out of date after the massive tree clearing undertaken for housing subdivisions in Brabham and Henley Brook. Destruction of the environment moves very fast in the growth corridor.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. I'll ask Councillor Howlett as the seconder.
Thank you. Councillors, we can't put the threat of increasing traffic congestion and the risk of losing the grant funding from the MRRG for the construction of the Henley Brook Avenue ahead of executing fully the motion of the March meeting, which is to complete an environmental assessment. I'm happy to see that that the staff are arranging to undertake an independent environmental assessment. However, 3 months have passed. So, the sooner this can be arranged, the sooner the business of constructing the Henley Brook Avenue can resume, but this time with a full understanding of the environmental assessment, and measures can be put in place to address issues that arise from it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howlett. I'll ask if anyone like to speak against. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm a little bit confused because we had a resolution back in March, and I don't know if we're adding to that resolution or amending. And amending a previous council decision, we wouldn't be able to do it this way, so we must be adding. But Madam Mayor, we seem to be bringing in all of Henley Brook Avenue. Now, this council passed a motion, south of Park Street, stop. But Madam Mayor, the notice of motion at the March meeting was to conduct environmental assessment from Sturian Drive to Reed Highway and to consult 2 specific community groups in drafting terms of reference of the assessment. The notice of motion included no direction to stop work, and the office comments noted that the section of Henley Brook Avenue north of Park Street may be substantially constructed by the time any further assessments is completed. It is important to note that why the clearing permit has been appealed and is under review. The permit was approved by DUA after rigorous review with an appropriate contribution paid by the city to fund offset acquisitions by DUA. The city does not have budget associated with a comprehensive environmental assessment for this financial year, so cannot engage a consultant until the budget associated with the assessment adopted through the 25-26 budget. For the environmental study to be comprehensive, there are multiple complexities that will lead to an extended delivery time frame. The study will likely require multiple consultants and subcontractors to cover the various areas of knowledge it requires. The city will need to request land access as previous council motions, put a halt to any land acquisition south of Park Street. The involvement of community groups in drafting in terms of reference introduces unnecessary uncertainty in the timeline of the study. It is expected that the study, I've been advised, will take approximately 12 months to complete, allowing for the remobilisation and waiting for summer construction. This pushes the earliest construction date to Q2-3 of the 26-27, with road opening likely to occur in 27-28. As mentioned in the report, the delay also carries a risk of losing $10 million in grant funding the city has received for the works. To replace a $10 million grant funding is an increase in rates of 6.5% on addition of any other. And under this section of the HBA, until this section of Henley Brook Avenue is constructed, the city is limited what they can do to improve the traffic situation on Asturian Drive. Councillors, don't forget about the motion at the April council meeting due to the issues as well. So councillors, I'm looking out for the residents and the ratepayers as well. I'm looking out for my ward. I'm looking out for the financial cost to this city. And I'm not saying anything about south of Park Street. But councillors, to me, we're having a second bite of the cherry. We're changing a previous decision. Let's get on and build this part of the road.
Councillor Bowman. I'll ask if anyone would like to speak for the motion. Anyone like to speak against the motion?
I have a question.
Question, Councillor Singh.
Yes, behalf of the March decision, so I'm just asking from a CEO, is the assessment has been started or what stage of that?
Thank you, Mr. Coaten.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the brief has been started to be prepared for the consultant. Then there 2 community groups have been contacted, the Swan Valley Residents Association and the Urban Bushland Council. We've had a response from the Bushland Council. As of yesterday, we hadn't had a reply from the Swan Valley Residents Association, but we are following up with them. But the money to actually do the study is on the 25-26 budget. It's on the draft budget, so the study can't actually commence until the budget is adopted by council.
Thank you.
So, further question. So, if the budget is adopted, or if it's not, so then how we can achieve that? What we have to pass in the March, in the full assessment, and if it's an impact on the residents, whatever the concern raised by the Councillor Catalano previously, and if it's still work going on, I need to understand that. So which way we go have to be sport.
You can assist, thank you.
Yeah, through you again, Madam Mayor. So the study would still, assuming that council adopt the budget, the money in the budget, the study would still go ahead, and no work would be undertaken to the south of Park Street in accordance with the previous resolutions of council. So council has previously approved to construct up to Park Street. It was coming from the north down to Park Street, but no further south. So nothing will happen further south of Park Street while this study is underway. But as outlined in the officer comment in the notice of motion in March, the work from Asturian to Park Street, which as per approved by council previously, would likely be largely completed by the time that study had been completed, but no work further than south of Park Street would occur until the study was finished.
Okay. Further
And
question?
it is not impacting to, like as Councillor Bowman said, we're losing the grant or something. Behalf of that, if we can hold that work still until the decision comes up for assessment.
Mr. Coden.
If work is halted, then there is the, as outlined in the officer comment, there is the risk that we will lose that funding.
Okay. I had previously called if anyone would like to speak for the motion. Anyone like to speak against the motion? No? You're right to reply.
Yes, this motion basically just clarifies the March motion because work is continuing on that little bit of Henley Brook Avenue between Asturian Drive and Park Street. And that's just to clarify that the whole of the alignment is to be assessed according to that March motion and agreement. Ultimately, in this contest between development and environment, you can't pick and choose a winner, as each are dependent on the other. There are no jobs on a dead planet, and communities are only healthy with a healthy natural environment. So, you know, whether it's in the budget now or not or whatever, I mean, the fact is that we need our environment. Henley Brook Avenue has to be an environmentally and economically sound project along the full length of its alignment, and that's why an independent environmental assessment must be conducted along the full length of the road alignment before any further work is done between Asturian Drive and Park Street. It's simple. Just because money is budgeted or spent for this on this section of the road, that's a poor reason to go ahead without the environmental checks. Further, everything about the need for Henley Brook Avenue changed when Drumpellier Drive and Northlink were built. There were never 3 new north-south link roads.
Point of order.
Councillor Catalan, if you could just resume your seat for a moment. Councillor Bowman, what was your point of order?
7.2, 1C, relevant. I was the only speaker that spoke against it. I didn't even mention Drumpellier.
Thank you. Uphold your point of order. Councillor Catalan, if you could continue.
There were never 3 new north-south link roads between Ellenbrook and Reed Highway identified, expected or planned for. There are better solutions that are a win for both the economy and the environment. The city should investigate and implement, for instance, a plan to encourage motorists to change their habits and move along.
Point of order.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Catalan, if you could resume your seat. Councillor Bowman, what was your point of order?
7.21C, irrelevance. I talked nothing about a report on motorist behaviour, and as the only person that spoke against it.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Yes, there was no mention of that. Councillor Catalan, if you could just keep to the item, please.
If the city can look at other ways to investigate whether this Henley Brook Avenue is necessary, given that it wasn't planned for, and given that there are environmental qualities, because Drumpellier, in my view, is underutilised, and that is where the traffic should be going, and that's where the city needs to encourage the traffic to go. It's been built, it has to be used. There's hardly any traffic on Drumpellier. Why build another road at ratepayers' expense, at the environmental expense, just because you've got a couple of dollars in some kitty from some grant, when we're losing the kind of habitat and the kind of forest trees that we've been talking about all evening? The contest should be a win-win for the environment and for development. And if we can't do that, we need to come clean with our community, and we need to stop promising that we're going to protect the environment.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. We'll now put that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Catalano, Councillor Singh, Councillor McCulloch, and Deputy Mayor Johnson and Councillor Howlett, and those against, and Councillor Ringo, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Prodovnik, and myself. 5 motions lost. 7-5. Thank you. Councillors, we're now going to have a quick 10-minute break. Those who are watching online will have a 10-minute break and we'll be back at 8:11. Thank you. Is he offline now? And we return from the 10-minute break and we move to item 15.3, Councillor Catalano, Henley Brook Avenue, Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. Councillor Catalano, if you'd like to read out your notice of motion, please.
That Council resolve to direct the CEO to refer the proposed Henley Brook Avenue roadworks from Asturian Drive to Park Street to the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water, Commonwealth, for a decision as to whether the roadworks need to be assessed and approved in accordance with referral guidelines for black cockatoos under the Environmental Protection, Biodiversity and Conservation Act. Reason for motion: 1. The City should refer the roadworks to the Commonwealth Agency because A. It's good practice and risk averse for the City on behalf of ratepayers to undertake all assessments prior to proceeding with works. B. Undertaking all assessments before progressing with works enhances the City's reputation in the community. C. The community now expects that an environmental assessment will be undertaken in accordance with the March 2025 resolution of Council. D. The risks from loss of biodiversity and bushland foraging and habitat trees for endangered cockatoos should be referred for assessment under the Commonwealth statutory provisions.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howlett. Is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Catalano.
The City has published strategies that accord with state, national and international conventions and legislation that give rise to community expectation that the City will do as it promises and retain and conserve the environment while fostering economic development. This particularly applies to the City's own infrastructure projects such as Henley Brook Avenue, which is under the City's control. The community are watching and they have informed me that contrary to the consultant's report prepared by the City's consultant, there are many mature trees that are slated for clearing that meet the threshold for cockatoo protection under the Commonwealth EPBC legislation in this section of Henley Brook Avenue between Asturian Avenue and Park Street. The City's Strategic Community Plan number 15, Life on Land, states, the City is home to a variety of terrestrial ecosystems that require sensitive management to avoid degradation and biodiversity loss. Pursuing this goal requires collective action by the City, our community and other stakeholders. The City recognises its role as a steward, facilitator and advocate for our natural environment and is committed to protecting and restoring ecosystems, managing both our natural and urban forests and to protecting biodiversity in the City of Swan. With objectives to enhance, preserve and protect local ecology and biodiversity of natural ecosystems and preserve our waterways as a strategic outcome for a sustainable natural environment. End of quote. The City's Community Health and Wellbeing Plan identifies biodiversity retention, water quality and efficiency actions, which are all environmental and that need to be assessed as important for human health, and provides future actions for environmental improvement. Sadly, despite the fine words, environmental protection hasn't happened. The City of Swan has an average of 10% canopy cover, well below the 30% targets for 2040. In 2022, the Swan Urban Growth Corridor, of which this section of Henley Brook Avenue exists in, has 10% cover, but this was before recent massive tree clearances in Henley Brook, Dayton and Brabham. Some estimate the canopy cover in this area to be well below 5%, which is a highly alarming outcome. Offsets are never a solution to loss of canopy cover here or there in Henley Brook, specifically in Henley Brook, because it's that part of the city that's affected by the tree clearing. More than self-assessment is needed.
I'll ask Councillor Howlett as the seconder.
Just briefly, it's very clear tonight, councillors, how important the survival of the endangered black cockatoos is to this council and what an important role we play in their survival. Please take that into consideration when you vote.
Thank you, Councillor Hallett. I'll ask if anyone would like to speak against the motion. Councillor Bowman.
Question first,
Question?
please, Madam Mayor, through you to the relevant staff member. What would be the impact if this motion was carried, and in particular, would it stop the construction work of Henley Brook Avenue from Asturian Drive to Park Street?
Mr. Coden.
Yes, it would. The outcome of this motion, if it was passed, would be similar to the outcome of the previous motion if it had have passed, other than that we would expect that the delay would be longer in this occasion. So the referral generally, we've been advised, would be a delay of approximately 18 months. So yes, that work from Asturian to Park Street would cease.
Thank you. And second question, Madam Mayor, through you to, I expect, the CEO. How is it that council is able to deal with this motion when prior to the break we just passed a motion not to put on hold this construction, and now we're voting to put on hold?
Thank you. Mr. CEO.
Thank you. And directly, you're not putting on hold, you're asking for the matter to be referred for an assessment. However, the effect of the assessment would be to delay the project for 18 months. So they are, it might sound counterintuitive, they are in part aligned with each other, but part not directly contradictory to each other. However, having already made a resolution to not put the works on hold, I can't see how you could pass this motion without having gone back to the previous one and sort of revocation.
My third question, Madam Mayor, during the break, did you get a revocation motion?
Did I receive a revocation motion?
Yeah, I believe outstanding was either through you or to the CEO.
No, not myself, no.
So going on the advice of the CEO prior to what that last question, how can this council deal with this motion before us, whether it has in effect the opposite effect of the motion we just passed before the break?
Mr. CEO.
So we start to get to the complexity of the elements of Reg 10, and that'll become clear during the item discussion on the confidential item 16.8, that where you see to move a motion to revoke or change something that has already been resolved, you need a third of council members to support the consideration of that motion. So based on what we've just looked at, and the legal advisor might sit here and offer some guidance to us, the first motion at 15.2 was to put on hold all works until an environmental assessment had been completed. This motion also refers to a motion that relates to a Commonwealth environmental assessment. Having made a decision not to put works on hold while that environmental assessment is now, albeit the complexity here is the environmental assessment referred to in 15.2 is one the city was initiating. 15.3 is slightly different in that it seeks a Commonwealth environmental assessment. So there are points of distinction here. I think if you were to pass this motion as it stands, it would conflict with 15.2, but only to the point it's referring to an environmental assessment. Now, the legal advisor, our general counsel, might want to make a comment as to whether, as we were seeking to change direction with this, whether the effect of the motion is that it will be done under Reg 10 of the administration regulations, and therefore for the consideration of it, you'd need 1/3 of council members to support it being put to the council for consideration, and that's something Mr. Lee may wish to offer a view on, Madam Mayor.
Question before we
Just
do
one
that.
moment. So the CEO has indicated Mr. Lee might like to add something to
Can I
that.
ask a question
Just
first?
one moment. Would you like to add anything, Mr. Lee, or you don't have to?
No, I don't think I have anything
Thank
to
you.
add.
Now I had two things here. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, look, I actually cannot recall what the outcome of 15.2 was. I understood that it was not resolved. What was the outcome?
Or 15.2.
2. Yeah.
15.2. Yes, thanks.
the 15.2 being a motion put, which was to put on work or put on hold all works. That motion wasn't passed. It wasn't passed 6 votes to 5. Now, a similar motion to that can't be moved within 3 months of a motion raised unless there's a revocation of that. That's the effect of notices of motion. So this motion seeks the same effect, which is to refer to an environmental assessment, albeit from a Commonwealth agency, not a state, the effect of which would be to put on hold all works for, at least as the Director has said, for a period of 18 months for a Commonwealth assessment. And if we've seen with other Commonwealth assessments of critical infrastructure, 18 months might be a relatively short period of time. So I'm suggesting, Madam Mayor, Councillor Bowman has a point that consideration of this would be in conflict with 15.2, not entirely directly, as every element of it is the same. One's our own referral, the other one's a Commonwealth. And that's why I've turned to Mr. Lee, is to say, well, the effect of this, which is changing direction, whether this motion needs then to be considered under Regulation 10, and that is for it to be considered, you'd need 5 councillors to have a simple vote to say it can be considered. If that were to be the ruling of the presiding member, then you could at least consider the motion.
Question.
Councillor Bowman had his hand up first.
Okay.
Councillor Bowman.
Madam Mayor, can I suggest we go behind closed doors so then the CEO can provide us more advice and the legal advice he obtained in relation to item 16.8, because I believe some of that legal advice is similar.
Move the motion, Madam
Yep.
Mayor.
Yep, happy to move that motion. So, seconder, Councillor Jones. Is anyone against? Do you wish to? No.
Seconded it.
Councillor Jones.
Who moved it, Madam Mayor?
Councillor Bowman.
Thank you.
And I ask, is anyone against?
Yeah, I'm against. Why shouldn't the public hear it?
Deputy Mayor. Do you wish to debate it?
For a procedural motion.
Don't have to?
Debate,
Okay,
go
just
to
put it to the vote. Those in favour to go behind closed doors?
You want to debate the procedural motion?
Okay,
So, Madam Mayor,
Just
the
one
mover of
moment.
a procedural motion can speak to it if they,
Sure.
if they so wish.
okay. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, we have legal advice that we've received on another matter that's requiring us to go behind closed doors. I think it's important that we are able to receive that legal advice also on this item, and as such we need to be able to go behind closed doors for the CEO to provide that and reference that.
Yeah, now you
Okay.
need to vote.
And I'll ask those in favour to go behind closed doors. Councillor Singh, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones, Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Brodovnik, and myself. And those against? We have the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Catalano, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Howlett. So it's carried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7-3. For those that are watching online, we are going to be offline while we take this item behind closed doors for a confidential discussion, and we will return as soon as we can. So it's only talking about 16.
16.2 as well.
I just need that on here.
So that motion which you've got there.
But I'm only reading
is
that
what you
section
read.
there, exactly as that is.
That's what you
Okay,
read.
that's fine, I don't need the number there. But I
Which is
thought
the
you did
officer's
need the number.
recommendation.
Sure, you don't have to have 16 point, the item number? Do you need the item number?
So you've got to read firstly, the one that was dealt with on 15, when we behind closed doors, 16.2 needs to be read to the public, and or then the 16.8 needs to be read to the public. Your motion
Wasn't behind closed door like it was, hang on a minute, hold on. Do we need to put that? Okay, we'll consider
Through
just
the
more.
chair, if I may, that Councillor Catalano's motion wasn't consented with to be considered by council if there was no motion.
Okay.
So that's why we moved to read the two motions that were dealt with, which is 16.2 and 16.8.
Well, Mr. CEO, wasn't it a decision of council? So therefore, it needs to be read out. So if you follow your previous reasoning that a non-decision is a decision of council, then it needs to be read out the same as the others.
So through the chair.
Yep.
So through the chair, for a motion to be considered and therefore a decision of council to be made or to be announced in that motion, there needs to be a motion. So council voted not to accept the motion, therefore they moved on. If that's what if that's what the mayor wishes to read out, she is welcome to. But there is no motion that was voted on. Council did not agree to consider the motion.
Yeah,
Now
well,
we need
previously
to
you've
read-
said that decisions
now we
are
need to
decisions
read-
when we don't vote for
Now
something.
we need to read the decisions of the two motions that were dealt by council, 16.2 and 16.8.
And the points.
But there was a decision of
So read all those
council
points.
not to continue with my motion. It was a decision of council that was voted on behind closed doors, and it needs to be minuted appropriately. That is what we have to do. I mean, this is the base minimum of this council is to get your minutes right.
Hang on a minute, councillor Bowman, just bear with us, we're nearly at the end, we're going to get through this last part.
Through the chair, a motion is the decision of a motion is read where there's a decision on the motion. Where a matter is not considered by council, there is not a decision because the council resolved not to consider the item. It is open, as I said a minute ago, Councillor Catalano, for the mayor to simply say, council resolved not to consider item 15.3, and then to read the decision on 16.2 and 16.8.
But that is not reflected in those minutes up there, and it needs to be reflected in the minutes that council resolved, which means voted on, not to continue with that motion. You know, the public needs to know. It's on the agenda. The public needs to know
But
that
through
that's
the-
what council decided not to do. And really, the vote should be put in there as well. But
So through the chair, what is not shown on the screen are the minutes. The minutes are what get produced at the end of a council meeting to reflect the decisions made at the council meeting. Decisions of council are read. So as I've said, the mayor is open to make a statement that council resolved not to consider item 15.3, that council made a resolution of 16.2 as follows, and council made a resolution of 16.8 as follows. Then in the minutes of the meeting, which will come in a written form, the full decisions of council will be included.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just... Sorry.
Which one, sorry? So it has to come up on the screen though. Yes, councillor Bedovnik.
Just to be clear, I guess what Councillor Catalano is saying is that there's just an accuracy of minutes. So even if it's not on the board now, are you saying that afterwards in the minutes there will be a reflection of that?
Thank you.
Through the chair, there's a responsibility to read decisions of council made in terms of motions that were before council. The minutes record the full proceedings of the debate, including any procedural motions made during out. When you come out behind closed doors, you need to read the decisions that were made. The decision on item 15.3 was not to consider the matter. Full stop. The because there was not 1/3 of council members that supported the consideration of the item. The decision on 16.2 and decision on 16.8 is what the mayor will read and for.
I guess my question is, after that, when the minutes are recorded, it will be recorded as we didn't vote on something, or what Councillor Catalano is asking for. That will be recorded, is that correct? Which I would support.
Through the chair, yes, in that under the requirements of the regulations, the proceedings of the councilmen are required to be recorded in the minutes. The proceedings include the procedural motion, which is to see whether there was 1/3 of councillors that would support the consideration of the item. In the absence of 1/3 of councillors considering it, the meeting moved to the next item. That will be in the full minutes, but for the purpose of reading decisions, that's what you're reading out to the members of the public. The two other matters need to be read in full.
And also mentioned what's the reason for why the council is not accepted for that motions, because it's a conflict with the previous motion. No, that's a reason. That's a reason. If we want to be add on, then the question come from community. Why the Councillor Catalano motion is not going to be proceed? What's the reason? So it is going to be conflicting in the community and a lot of discussion.
Okay, Councillor Bowman.
Madam Mayor, through you to the CEO, can he please advise where this council made a decision on 15.3? Three councillors expressed they wanted it to be considered, but I do not recall this council making a decision on 15.3, which has been suggested by a couple of councillors around this table now. It's a big difference, but I may have missed it.
Mr. CEO.
So, through the chair, the complexity of 15.2 and 15.3 is a result of the resolution made on 15.2. 15.3 in its current form couldn't be considered. I'm not going to go into the nuances dealt with that. The minutes would simply record that under Regulation 10, for council to have considered a change of direction, 5 councillors were required to support the motion. A vote was taken. 3 councillors supported, the others were against. Council then moved to the next item of business. That would be the simple way of recording the decision. It doesn't go into anything else into the complexities. So, Madam Mayor, you just need to read the decisions on
So, but they're not much up.
16.2.
Oops, this one here. So that plus that.
So 16.2 is that.
All of it to there, and then when at the end of that.
That was what Councillor Bowman moved.
Yep.
And then you come back down to.
So you read those 4 points there.
Yeah, you have to read the decision. And then you've got that was Councillor.
Oh, now it's added. I couldn't see it because it wasn't coming up. So she's going to move that up.
She's
and
going
then
to
not worry about those bits there.
That's the same.
Because I can't see the bottom.
Keep going down, Kathy.
Sorry, when I read through it, if you can keep up, like scrolling up for me.
So that's the same thing as resolved there as approved in the office.
So just reading the whole thing down to there. And not worry about that.
Don't worry about this one.
So just that whole chunk there.
Yep.
That's all we need. Thanks. That was just not lining up with that. Okay. Right. So we're just going to come out from behind closed doors. I've had a motion to come in. Oh, right, Councillor. It's no problem. Yep. Oh, thank you. All right, councillors, we are going to come out from behind closed doors and we're going to close that meeting. Oh, right, we're going to close the meeting. Thanks, Councillor Catalano. It's been a long night, okay? Thank you. We're back online. For those watching at home online, we're just back online now. Thank you. For those that are watching at home, we've come out from behind closed doors and we discussed 16.2, which is the sale of lot 811 Junction Parade Midland, which is a confidential schedule. That council resolved to 1, offer the first right of refusal to Demol Investments. 2, if the first right of refusal is declined, authorise the CEO to commence public advertising of the proposed disposition in accordance with S 3.583A of the Local Government Act 1995 and to make a copy of the concept plan publicly available. 3, if any submissions on the proposed disposition are received, a report will return to council for a final decision under section 3.583B of the Local Government Act 1995. And point 4, if no submissions are received, the CEO is authorised to finalise the disposition by signing the option deed with the appended draft sale and development agreement on terms as contained in this report. Item 16.8, Eastern Metropolitan Regional Council, which was the confidential schedule. Recommendation is that Council resolve to 1. Adopt the confidential recommendations contained within this report, and 2. Confidentially communicate these recommendations to the Minister for Local Government and other EMRC members. And that brings us to the end of tonight's Ordinary Council meeting. And part 17, notice of motions for consideration at the following meeting, if given during the meeting. The deadline for submissions will be 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 18th of June, 2025. And we'll close the meeting tonight at 9:13. Thank you.